gifts laid during the ceremony. Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Dennis Stockman, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Paul Mogger. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors and students on behalf of Kiama High School, New South Wales, and Helena College from Western Australia. Please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Clarence Ellis. Popularly known as Clarry, Clarence Millington Ellis was born in Eden, New South Wales in 1893, one of 6 sons and 2 daughters born to Joseph and Mary Ann Ellis. When he was a boy, his family moved to Candelo, where he grew up and attended the local state school. He was known as a good footballer and an upstanding, manly fellow in every respect. Clarence went on to become a blacksmith. In early 1911, he left the family home to work in the mines at Catherine Hill Bay. Nearly 2 years later, he was in Melbourne working as a carpenter with his brother Theo. Clarence Ellis enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force at Melbourne in late 1914. He underwent a brief period of training in Australia before leaving for active service overseas with the 2nd Contingent. Private Ellis arrived on Gallipoli in early May 1915, later writing home that he was happy and lousy. In fact, his health suffered badly during his time on the peninsula, and he spent several periods in hospital with dysentery. He also wrote home about an incident which he described in a letter to his mother, writing, "I was blown out of a trench by a big shell, and my nerves are all shook up a little, but I will soon get over that. If you could have seen me up there in the air, you would have thought I would have been shook out for good." If this happened, Ellis managed not to be wounded. He suffered from poor military discipline and had a number of charges recorded against his name for absence and insolence. Private Ellis was affected by his time on Gallipoli, writing, "To hear the well-known cry for stretcher bearers and to hear the boys saying, 'I'm done, boys.' It seemed hard when you see them lying dead and to think they have left Australia, no one knowing how brave they were. It is harder still when it is one of your own mates. After one charge we had, I lost all my mates, and that night when I lay down to sleep, I was alone. I waited all night for them, but they were gone." While on Gallipoli, Ellis became close mates with Private Tom Tyra, another soldier with questionable military discipline. this pair spent various periods of time in hospital in Egypt before being sent to France to fight on the Western Front. Private Ellis had one more period of being absent without leave before his battalion was committed to the fierce fighting around the French village of Pozières. On the 5th of August 1916, Ellis was wounded by a bomb blast to the head and legs. His wounds were slight and he returned to active duty. From that point on, his disciplinary issues seemed to have stopped and his record was clear. He remained with the battalion throughout the severe winter of 1916 as it rotated in and out of the front line. In early 1917, the 8th Battalion followed up the German withdrawal to the Hindenburg Line. On the 22nd of April, a large party of the 8th Battalion attacked German positions near the French village of Lagnacourt. Although the Germans put up a fierce defence, the men of the 8th Battalion forced their way into their strong point, killing a number of Germans and taking 3 prisoner. Later that night, heavy German artillery fire forced the surviving Australian garrison in the strong point back to their original lines. Private Ellis never returned. Private Tom Tyra wrote to Mrs. Ellis in Australia to tell her what happened to her son. He wrote, "I am broken-hearted about poor Clary. He was shot in the head whilst we were attacking. The only words he said were, 'I am hit!' and he died at the clearing station. We were wrapped up in each other. I can tell you, you have my deepest sympathy. You have the proud satisfaction of knowing that he was a man and was well liked, and he was always cheerful, which went a long way with me. I never had another mate, so you can imagine how lonely I feel. I would sooner it had been me, for there is no one to mourn over me." In Australia, Private Ellis's death was reported in the local papers with the words, "He was just the type of man who could be counted upon in the grim business he so willingly undertook for his country. His sacrifice has made him immortal." Private Clarence Ellis was buried in the Red Cross Corner Cemetery at Burnley. He was 23 years old. Clarence Ellis's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Clarence Millington Ellis, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they'll be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and good evening.